Hello and welcome to another build guide. Today I'm gonna show you my strongest character so far in terms of doing Rev 10 and having the most defense as well, cause yeah, it's pretty strong in those two categories. So, um, aesthetically this character is the most pleasing to watch, I would say. Like, it looks very powerful when you play this character, as you saw in the preview. And not only that, it also deals a shitload of damage. So it's just a very satisfying character to play in general. So I'm going over why I chose this Reaper right here and not some other Reaper. And the reason for that is when you use the Elder Staff of the Slum Temple, you can get 25% of your Elder Slum as additional damage in your primary or secondary skill. Now this can be good and quite bad depending on the ability, but for this particular character you can scale a lot of increased modifiers, even if it's additional damage on the mage. Like, for example, some other abilities would not benefit that much from 44,000 additional damage if you cannot, like, let's say, scale it somehow. But on this character you can scale that 44,000 quite easily with a few tricks. And then the ability itself that I'm using. Um, let's talk about this ability right here. All of the Arcane Master. Like, what is that ability, bro? It is nuts. Because you can scale so much damage out of this ability. Like, it's actually crazy. So, like, first off, let's look at this one. In Unity, the strength. So this one you can scale increased damage through fork chance. So, like, you get like clear speed and damage from one stat alone. That's pretty nuts. You can then take this one with arcane clones, where you get your arcanes. And this pretty much, honestly, I think this over triples your damage when you take the arcane clone. Like, clones on this character is fucking nuts. Like, I think oh man, it's so much damage. And then we take this one, Ancestral Orb. So this does that you cannot deal any skill damage and only deal elemental damage, but that's a huge buff to our character. Because we have the additional damage, and additional damage is not... how can I say this? It's not skill damage and it's not elemental damage either. So if you convert your damage over to, let's say, elemental damage and get this 100% increased damage, it's just a double damage multiplier. So this one is quite nuts, especially with the Reaper we're using. This one is just a tiny bonus with cooldown, and then this one is just a lot of cooldown recovery from Arcane Breach. But I'm going over that later, I would say. So before I start talking too much about this character, I want to go over why I like picked this over some other Reaper. I mean, I kind of explained that already, but you could technically get more damage on another Reaper, I think. And the Reaper that I'm talking about is the Giant Staff of the Giant Slayer. So I tested this without even getting the plus levels from gear, and it, at least on elite enemies, I could deal up to, I think it was 8 million in a single hit if I had everything perfectly aligned. So this is another Reaper that I can recommend if you do not have the grinded Elder Slorm and Pure Slorm required for this Reaper right here. So the Giant Slayer would probably be your second best choice. You could probably take the Staff of the Deadly Accuracy, just because you could, like, this have a third evolution right here, as you can see over here. I haven't unlocked that yet, but it has a lot of flat Reaper damage that you can then scale with elemental damage, increased modifiers, and so forth. You do need this amulet to activate that, to make it really, really powerful. So I would say this is required if you want to do a really, really powerful build with one of the other staffs. I'm not sure if there's any other staves that I can recommend. No, I think these two are the best ones. Giant Slayer and Accuracy Staff, definitely the best. So, yeah. So yeah, another thing that we can do with this Temple Staff is that we get a multiplicative effect of our ultimatums. So when we pick up Elder Slorm, we get this 155 Elder Slorm multiplier applied to our ultimatum. And if you use this one, it's going to be like, normally it's 280, but when you then pick up Elder Slorm, you get up to like 700, I think, 700 plus crit damage. So that's quite massive, especially when you're just doing expeditions. It's quite nutty. So yeah. So that's why we're using this flawless power ultimatum. Definitely the strongest choice. And another thing is the Primordial version, dude. So the Primordial version does that your inner fires also gain that additional damage, but you can only have 5 max charges, and the inner fires rotate in the same orbit, so it's like in the same spot every time that they spin around. Like it's kind of good and it's kind of bad, but when you have played a build like the Inner Fire Knight that I played earlier, this is not gonna satisfy you in terms of a primordial version of a weapon. Like this is just it's just visually cool, I guess, but that's about it. Like you don't gain anything from this one. So just having the normal weapon is fine. Like you do not get anything else out of it, I would say. So yeah. And as you can see, our clones are shadow infused, and the reason why we want shadow embowed clones is because when they're embowed with the dark ritual or whatever you call it, shadow, you get 50% increased damage, and increased damage from this just means a multiplicative damage multiplier. So that's at 1.5 times more damage. So that's a no-brainer. No other embowed elements are that powerful. And we even pick something like this just to get over to it. Like this one is not that good because we don't have any raw damage, and we cannot scale our crit damage further because we use the ultimatum that locks our crit damage in. We do get this one. This is actually quite powerful, and I'm gonna talk about that a bit later in the video. And then we get this Ancestral gift on the way as well. So overall, 3 of them is quite good. The first one is just for traveling. So, in other words, why is this character so powerful in terms of defense? So you would guess when you make clones, they cannot leech for you, but apparently in Slormancer, clones can leech for you, and that is absolutely, I would say it's kind of disgusting, because you can just, when you have this many energy balls all over the screen, you're gonna hit an enemy constantly. And if you take damage, you instantly get all your health back, because you deal like millions of damage. And when you deal millions of damage with like 1% life leech, you're just gonna instantly get all your health back. So there's not that many things that can actually kill you except for catalysms, like the challenger breaches, where there's like on death effects. So that's pretty much the only thing that kills us. And yeah, I think that's about it. Like I rarely die to enemies, and if I die to enemies, I'm not sure what I even got killed by. So yeah, defense is quite strong, and on top of that, I just quickly want to show another cool thing, and that is this one right here, Turn the Tide. So if you scale projectile damage reduction, you also gain projectile damage, and this is also multiplicative. So this character, dude, there's so many things that is just nuts. It's just nuts. So yeah, if you get like, honestly, if you have the investment, you should go after 100% projectile damage reduction if possible, because it's just more damage and more defense, and projectiles is usually what kills you from enemies anyway, so why not pick that up? So yeah, overall, defensive-wise, this character is nuts. And it's funny because we have this shield right here, the Arcane barrier, but I never use this. It's just, I mean, it's just a meme. I think it would probably be very good in the future when they're going to add a lot of more like boss fights into the game. And then let's say there's a boss that has a lot of projectile based stuff. That means this ability would actually be pretty good, because you can like put this shield up and then let your clones fire for you and deal massive damage. So yeah, but that's for future stuff, I guess. Now let me go over some gear, and you're probably wondering, oh god damn, this guy has a lot of legendaries. And I would argue that only, let me see, how many? How many of the legendaries is necessary? I would say the helmet is very necessary on this character, because this one is the reason why we can actually sustain our mana quite easily. You can play this character without the legendary effect, but you would need to scale a bit more mana and then get a bit of mana leech. But if you have mana leech, you're instantly getting all your mana back anyway, right? But if the clones shoot from far away or shoot at, let's say, the wizard men with the proximity bubbles, they can get quite annoying, because if your clones just constantly shoot at them when they're not in the bubble, you're just gonna constantly lose all your mana, and that feels really annoying. And on top of that, the elite wizard men reflect projectiles, so they can pretty much melt you instantly if you're not careful. And that's one of the other reasons why I think getting at least close to 100% projectile damage reduction would be very powerful, because then you could like just ignore that completely. So yeah, this one is very nice, and what it does is that when you deal Ancestral Strike damage, you gain 0 mana cost on skills for the next 4 seconds if you have a level 10 legendary effect. So that is very, very powerful, and that means you can just spam your skills, and so can your clones. So yeah, very nice. Another thing is shoulder. This is mandatory as well. This is even more mandatory than the helmet, I would say. So this one just I mean, it just grants you 4 additional projectiles. and this really opens up a lot of clear speed and also damage, I would say, because you also scale rebound chance on this character. And as you can see, we're scaling attack speed, fork chance, damage to elites, a bit of life leech on this shoulder right here, and life, if you can get your hands on it. This legendary is not necessary. This just means that you're getting critical strike chance multiplier against enemies with 90% life or above. This is not gonna change anything in your gameplay. Like, it will not change anything unless it's on a character that actually scales the highest hit damage possible in a single hit to just one-shot everything, but that's not our character because we one-shot everything anyway, or at least close to it. The gloves legendary effect is very nice, but it's not necessary. Like, you can still, like, for example, on my character right now, we use Arcane Breach, and Arcane Breach grants us a lot of attack speed to our clones if they stand in the area of effect, like right here. If they stand in the area of effect, they get 50% increased attack speed, and that's quite a lot. So, yeah, and I rarely use it because it's not necessary. But you can. Like, in the beginning, it's quite nice to have, I would say. So, especially if you don't have these legendary gloves with 20% cooldown. And as you can see, we're scaling a lot of essential strike damage, attack speed, essential strike chance, crit chance, fork and rebound. I have a little bit of elemental penetration. I'm not sure how much that does, honestly. I haven't really noticed a difference with penetration and armor penetration. I cannot see the difference when I play this game, so I'm not sure how big of an impact it has on your character. This ring is completely, like, the legendary effect is completely useless, is what I'm trying to say. But there's a few other things that are really powerful, and that is that our clones scale with totem effect, and totem effect means increased damage. And if you have 207% increased totem effect, that means 200% increased damage, essentially. And that is one of the other reasons why I thought it would be cool to scale this Elder Staff. Because scaling totem effect on the clones is just, I don't get why they're getting this. Like, I would not say they're totem. Like, they are played like a totem, but they should be a clone of yourself, I suppose. So gaining the opportunity to get this much damage, it's kind of, I don't know, man. It's so insane. I don't get it. It's kind of dumb. So yeah, other than that, we're using rebound as well and damage to elites if you can get that, because damage to elites is quite nice to have. You get to a point where it's not really necessary because it's just, I would say, if you have like invested a lot of time into the character, getting projectile damage reduction might actually be better than damage to elites, but I guess it comes down to preference. Our boots, just life, movement speed, incidental strike damage, life, damage to elites, totem effect if you can get your hands on it. I can recommend the boots that has more pickup range and Goldus Find, like the legendary effect, if you can get your hands on it, because that would mean that this character would be a crazy Goldus Find character as well. We have this one. This is more of a luxury item in the beginning, but later on it's not necessary with the legendary effect. So what it does is that it grants you a big chunk of mana back when you use the ability, and then it grants you a bit of mana over time as well, equal to your skill and elemental damage. Um, this is not necessary either. Like if you have just a bit of mana regen and mana leech in the beginning, that's gonna help you quite a lot compared to this. The belt is a luxury item, I would say. So what this does, like the legendary effect, is that 18% of your damage dealt to you is staggered and is dealt to you over 10 seconds instead of dealt instantly. So let's say it's just 10% damage you take. I mean, I mean, I mean, when you take 100%, not 100%. How should I say this? If you take 100 damage, 18% of that damage is dealt over 10 seconds, and you can then remove that staggered damage if you deal Ancestral Strike damage. And your clones is gonna deal that constantly, so this is a huge defensive layer on this character. Because you like they're constantly hitting for Ancestral Strike damage all the time. So if you can get your hands on this belt, I can highly recommend it. It's really powerful. And yeah, just get movement speed, crit chance, and rebound chance. I didn't get. I'm not sure why I didn't get the epic stats on this. I forgot, I think. So yeah. Oh, and the same goes for the chest. I mean, the cape. So this legendary effect is not something I can recommend. And the simple answer for that is sometimes you do run out of mana, and when you take a bit of damage, you will never like regen it up when you take constant damage with this cape on. So this is actually, I would say it's a downside more than a defensive layer. I think it ruins the character quite a lot sometimes. So do not pick this legendary effect. It's kind of similar to this one, but this one just takes from your mana instead of your life. So it's quite good on paper, but not on this character, I would say. And the chest legendary is not necessary either. I'm not even sure why I have this. I think I have this just because of, yeah, I had some good stats on it, and that's all. So we have live projectile damage reduction, very important. A bit of all damage reduction. That does not count towards projectile damage reduction in terms of the, let me see, uh, towards this node right here. So the only thing the all damage reduction does is it's just all damage reduction. It's quite nice. You could pick something else if you want to. And then I have Essential Strike damage and attack speed. And yeah, that's about it. Remember to scale a lot of totem effect and Essential Strike damage and crit chance if possible. Get a bit of life leech and a bit of mana leech, and then you're pretty much good to go with your gear. So, oh yeah, and add-ons. As I said earlier in the video, Arcane Breach on your gear is probably going to be the best, but if you're using another, like let's say Reaper, I would probably say half and half with Arcane Breach and Orb of the Arcane Master added to your gear. So yeah, and then of course get the level of the Reaper itself onto them. And the reason why we want Arcane Breach on all our pieces of gear is because of this one right here. So all of the Arcane Master has cooldown time, reduced cooldown time is equal to twice your mastery level of Arcane Breach. So our Arcane Breach is really high leveled, and that means we just get a crap load of cooldown recovery. And that's really powerful, as you can see right here. If we do this, we lose a lot of DPS. So yeah, it's really good. Okay, so another thing that I haven't showed yet is the attributes. And here's why I think another Reaper is probably going to be better overall. Because we're taking this one right here. You would think that this one right here, the one that gives you totem dexterity, is really, really powerful. It's really not. Like, this is a meme more than a actual good node. This node right here means that you get a bit of totem effect as long as you only use totem skills. But if you haven't gained a totem stack recently, you lose all your totem stacks. So like, and when I say recently, if you haven't been into combat in 3 to 4 seconds, I think, you lose all your stacks. Like, what is that about? So this node right here is just a meme. Like, just ignore this node right here. So one of the other reasons why we want to pick this route is because we can get a bit of crit chance, like 16% if we get all of them, and that starts from here. But you cannot have any enemies near you in a 3 yards radius to get that bonus. So it's kind of a tricky one. Like, the dexterity is just more attack speed than anything else. And the reason why I'm picking this is because we cannot scale our character with any other sources than, let's say, crit chance, incidental strike chance, and totem effect, right? Attack speed and so on. Like, on another character, you could pick this one with bravery, where each legendary grants you 10% elemental damage. So already here you would get way more increased damage if you made an elemental based character rather than the Elder, Slorm, Temple, Staff, something. And what you get on the last point in the dexterity is this one right here. So the further away enemies are, the more increased damage you get against them. So you can, like, when you play a character like this, you can play very safe, so stand like very far away from the enemy, and then you can like get, let's say if it's 10 yards away, you get 30% increased damage. And increased damage means a multiplicative damage on top of it. So it's like 1.3 times more damage. And that is the only reason why I picked this. I think this was just the best option at the time, and I think it still is. But if you made an elemental character, you would ignore dexterity and go up in bravery instead. That would be way better. So, let's go over masteries. Now that we, man, is this yeah, this is gonna be a long video, guys. I'm sorry. Why did we pick Arcane Commander? There's a simple reason for that, and that is we get one additional clone right here and another additional clone here. So yeah, that means instead of having one clone, you get 3, and that's very powerful. That's 3 times the damage, essentially. What do we pick in the top? We pick this one, so every time you take damage, you get mana back. And that is just because we really want to have as much mana uptime as possible, no matter what. Because if you do not have any mana, it will feel really clunky. Hello there. Another thing is this one. This one is very powerful. So every time you deal a critical strike to enemies, you silence them for 1 second. And when you have a skill like this, oh god. Sorry guys. Okay, so, and silence means that they cannot use any abilities anymore, and that means you are essentially not going to take any damage from them, and that is very powerful. Another thing, I'm gonna skip this because these are not necessary. You could skip these. They're not gonna change anything on your build. Oh god. Another thing is this one, Arcane clone, MK2 apparently it's called. Oh god. I'm sorry guys. My cat is going fucking wild. So yeah. it just grants you 30% increased attack speed with clones, so that's very powerful. You get this one, so the more mana you have, the more armor you get. So that's a really nice defensive thing to have. I mean, I don't think it does that much. Let's see. I mean, 8% damage reduction. That's pretty good. I would say that's pretty good. And then I talked about this one earlier. So the more projectile damage reduction you have, the more damage you get. This is just nuts. This node right here is fucking nuts, guys. Let's be real. This should not be in the game. So yeah, this one is a no-brainer, especially if you can scale it beyond what I have right now. Like getting 50%, that is 1.5 times more damage. I mean, that's nutty. And then yeah, we got the Arcane King right here as well. We did go over the Arcane Master, but let's do that again. So Fork Chance grants you increased damage as well. So this is a multiplicative damage. This one grants you the ability to create clones of the Arcane clone. Ancestral Orb was a double damage essentially, because we have the additional damage that we can scale from this. So this is very nice. You can even see it if I unequip it. Like, you lose all your damage pretty much. So as you can see, it's just a double damage multiplier right here. I mean, this character is just packed with increased damage modifiers. It's so crazy. And yeah, this one was just a bit of cooldown equal to your of the arcane barrier. I mean, arcane barrier is what it's called. It does give a bit of attack speed, but it's not that much. And then we talked about this earlier, so if you're using the Reaper that I'm using right now, this one is definitely going to be very powerful, because you get so much cooldown. It's kind of nutty. And then we have the Arcane Breach right here. So the first thing we take is this one, if you place it down. So the more enemies that are inside the Arcane Breach, the more mana you get and the more mana regeneration you get. So early on this can be quite nice to have. The next row right here is not going to be good, I would say. You could pick this one, the Peaceful Breach, just to level it up, because if you pick this up, you are going to be able to spam it like crazy. And yeah, that is a very nice way to level it up. But the downside of this is that Arcane Breach can no longer deal damage, and you do not want that early, I mean, later on the character. Another thing is this one, so every time you hit an enemy, you gain a stack. Conflux stacks, not Conflux, Arcane Flux stack, and that grants you a bit of attack speed, up to 25 stacks, and you get 1% increased attack speed per stack. So that's 25% increased attack speed. If you have hit enemies enough in the next 2 seconds. Another thing is this one, and this is what I talked about. It grants you 50% increased attack speed if your Arcane clones stand in the Arcane Breach. So if you have like 3 clones like this and put your Arcane Breach over them, they get a lot of more DPS. But it is, I would say it's not necessary. I rarely use Arcane Breach because it's not necessary. Like, your clones are gonna deal massive damage anyway, so why use Arcane Breach? There's no reason to. And another thing is this one, Arcane Breach now continuously pulls nearby enemies toward the center. Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna notice this. You could probably like just unequip it and have less mana cost if you want to. Like the enemies are gonna die anyway, like instantly. So this is just for preference, I guess. I will say the character has a downside, and the downside is that visual clarity, like you cannot see anything when, let's say, you take a Chaos Breach. There's like balls everywhere, and you simply cannot see anything. And you make it even worse when you use Arcane Breach. Like if you use Clones and Arcane Breach at the same time, you are not gonna see anything. So you cannot see projectiles, you cannot see death effects on the ground or anything like that. So yeah, that's the only downside I would say. Another downside would probably be um, the grind to get to this point that I am at. Like it's kind of gear dependent. Like the helmet and the shoulder is definitely the most important ones, and then comes the amulet. So if you have the amulet, helmet, and shoulder, you should be pretty much good to go to make this character, without a doubt. But yeah, other than that, guys, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. And I already have another character ready for that. I just gotta record it, you know. The other character is not as powerful, but it's going to be a fun one anyway. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. So take care, guys, and see you in the next video.